The council chamber stretched wide enough to hold creatures from 40 different worlds. Crystal columns rose toward a ceiling that showed the stars beyond, and in the center of it all, representatives from dozens of species gathered to argue about borders, trade routes, and who got to mine which asteroids. It was supposed to be civilized. It was supposed to be safe. Ambassador Sarah stood at the human podium, her dark hair pulled back in a simple bun, her suit perfectly pressed. She had been doing this job for 2 years now, ever since Earth joined the Galactic Council. 2 years of careful words and cautious steps. 2 years of being the new species that nobody quite trusted yet. The delegation sat across from her, massive creatures that looked like someone had crossed a mantis with a bear and then covered it in armored plates. Their leader, OK, towered over even his own kind at nearly 4 meters tall. His mandibles clicked together as he spoke, the translator rendering his words into flat, emotionless sentences. The mining rights in the Terran expanse will be divided equally among the 4 powers, OK said. This is not a discussion. This is an announcement. Sarah kept her face calm, though her heart beat a little faster. The Terran expanse sat right next to human space. Those asteroids contained rare elements that Earth needed for building the next generation of ships. With respect, the expanse is within the territory that Earth was granted when we joined the Council. We're willing to share some access, but not equal division with 4 other empires. The representative, a being made of living crystal that refracted light in rainbow patterns, chimed softly. The human makes a valid point. The treaty clearly establishes. The treaty, OK interrupted, was written when we thought humans would understand their place. You have 30 systems, we have 300. You have been in space for 200 years. We have been traveling the stars for 3,000. He stood up, his shadow falling across Sarah's podium. You should be grateful we allow you to mine anything at all. Sarah felt the temperature in the room change. The other ambassadors shifted in their seats or on their pedestals or in their fluid tanks. Everyone knew they had a temper. Everyone knew it was usually better to just let them have their way on small matters. But this wasn't small, not to humanity. This was about whether Earth could stand on equal footing with the older species, or whether humans would always be treated like children who should be grateful for scraps. We're not asking for gratitude, Sarah said quietly. We're asking for what was promised to us, what we earned. The ambassador, a creature that looked almost human except for the third eye in the center of its forehead, sent out a wave of calming telepathic energy. Sarah felt it wash over her, trying to make her more agreeable, more willing to compromise. She pushed it away. They meant well, but this wasn't their fight. OK's mandibles spread wide in what they considered a smile. To humans, it looked like a threat display. Earned? What has your species earned, ambassador? You make decent fusion drives and adequate kinetic weapons. You barely understand quantum communication. Your ships are slow. Your military is a joke. You have earned nothing. Sarah's jaw tightened. She had been insulted before. Politics was full of insults, especially when you represented the member of an old boys' club. She could handle insults. Nevertheless, she said, keeping her voice level, the Terran expanse remains under human jurisdiction until this council votes otherwise. We will defend our territorial rights. Defend, OK laughed, a harsh barking sound that made several of the smaller species flinch. With what? Your ancient missiles, your chemical thrusters. He moved then, faster than something that large should be able to move. One moment he was at his podium, the next he was crossing the chamber floor towards Sarah. The council security drones started forward, but they were designed to stop minor scuffles between delegates, not intercept a 4-meter warrior moving at full speed. Sarah barely had time to register what was happening before OK's clawed hand struck her across the face. The impact lifted her off her feet and sent her crashing into the podium behind her. She heard something crack in her chest, felt her face explode in pain. The world tilted and dimmed. Through blurred vision, she saw OK standing over her. This is what humans need to learn, he announced to the chamber. "Your place, your weakness. You came to the stars too early with too much pride. Someone needed to teach you humility." Sarah tried to breathe and couldn't. Something was wrong with her chest, her lung. She tasted blood. The pain in her face felt distant now, which probably meant shock was setting in. She could hear voices shouting, but they seemed far away. The representative was demanding OK be restrained. There was calling for medical assistance. Other voices argued, some supporting the others condemning him. But no one moved to help her. No one dared challenge the directly. Sarah's vision darkened around the edges. Her last clear thought before unconsciousness took her was wondering if Earth would even care. She was just one ambassador, just one human among billions. Maybe nobody would do anything at all. Maybe OK was right about humanity's place in the galaxy. She was wrong about that, very, very wrong. The medical team arrived within minutes, efficient and professional. They stabilized Sarah, sealed her collapsed lung, and began treating the shattered bones in her face. They insisted she be taken to their medical facility, which was the best in council space. They offered to ease her pain telepathically. The delegation, meanwhile, departed immediately, with OK making no apology and offering no regret. She needed to learn respect, was all he said before leaving. The council chamber emptied slowly. Representatives whispered to each other, shocked by the violence but uncertain what to do about it. The Empire was powerful, perhaps the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Starting a conflict over one injured ambassador seemed foolish. These things happened sometimes in politics. Usually everyone just moved on. Earth received the news 6 hours later. The communication lag from Council space to Sol system meant that by the time Fleet Admiral James saw the footage of the attack, Sarah was already in surgery and they were already back in their own territory. He watched the video 3 times, his face expressionless. Then he forwarded it to the unified Earth government with a single note attached. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol Omega, awaiting authorization. The President of Earth watched the video once. That was all it took. She had been a soldier before becoming a politician, had served in the resource wars when humanity was still confined to one planet and fighting itself. She understood violence. She also understood that if you let someone hurt your people without responding, they would do it again, and again, and again, until your people were slaves. Authorization came through in under an hour. Across human space, every ship, every station, every outpost received the same coded message. 3 words that most civilians would never know existed, but that every military officer had memorized. Fury Protocol active. In space, human traders began packing their goods. Human technicians shut down the quantum communicators they had installed in stations. Human engineers encrypted all the technical data they had shared and wiped every server they could access. They noticed but weren't concerned. If the humans wanted to take their toys and go home, that was fine. There were other species to trade with. What they didn't notice was the other thing happening. Every human ship that left space was carrying detailed scan data, population centers, military installations, defense platforms, fleet anchorages, the locations of every ship, every weapon, every shield generator. Data that human ships had been quietly collecting for 3 years, just in case it was ever needed. It was needed now. The Galactic Council received an official communication from Earth 12 hours after the attack. It was brief and formal, delivered by Admiral himself. His image appeared on every council representative's personal display at the same time, ensuring they all received the message simultaneously. The Empire has committed an act of war against humanity by attacking our ambassador during a diplomatic session. Ambassador was under the protection of Council immunity. This protection was violated intentionally and with premeditated malice. We demand the following. OK will be surrendered to human custody within 72 hours to stand trial for attempted murder and violation of diplomatic immunity. The Empire will issue a formal apology and pay reparations for medical costs and damages. Failure to comply will result in humanity exercising its right to proportional response under Council law. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification. You have 72 hours. The transmission ended. No discussion, no debate, just a deadline. The representative immediately called for an emergency session. "This is madness," she chimed, her crystalline body pulsing with agitated colors. "The will never surrender, okay? He is a hero to their people, and humanity cannot seriously be considering military action. They would be annihilated." The representative closed his third eye, a sign of deep concern. "I have been attempting to read human intentions telepathically. What I sense from their leadership is disturbing. There is no anger, no rage, just certainty, absolute certainty. They have already decided what they will do if their demands are not met." "Let them come," the ambassador said, all four of his arms crossed in a gesture of contempt. "We have crushed a dozen species. We will crush one more if they are foolish enough to attack us." The council voted on whether to intervene. The vote was close, but ultimately they decided to do nothing. This was a matter between humanity and the council would offer to mediate, but it would not take sides. That was the diplomatic way, the safe way, the way that had kept the peace for centuries. The representative sent a private message to Admiral, begging him to reconsider. "Your species has so much potential," she wrote. "Please do not throw it away over pride. Ambassador will recover. This is not worth starting a war." His reply was even shorter than Earth's official demand. "You don't understand humans yet. Maybe you will after this. We gave them 72 hours. That's more mercy than they gave Sarah." The timer began counting down. 72 hours. 3 days for them to realize their mistake and back down. 3 days for sanity to prevail. But in the Empire there was only laughter. They fortified their borders. They mobilized their fleet. They prepared to show these upstart humans what real power looked like. 300 worlds against 30. 3,000 years of military tradition against 200 years of. The outcome was obvious. They had never been more confident. They had never been more wrong. Because while they were preparing for a traditional war, with ships and shields and plasma cannons, humanity was preparing something else entirely. Something that would make the wish they had never heard of Earth. Something that would teach the entire galaxy a lesson that would echo for generations. The 72 hours ticked away, and humanity waited, silent and patient, for the time when words would end and actions would speak louder than any threat could ever be. The deadline passed at exactly 14:00 Universal Standard Time. For 1 minute, nothing happened. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if humanity would actually follow through on its threat or if it had been a bluff all along. They laughed in their council chambers and sent mocking messages toward Earth, calling humans cowards who hid behind empty words. At 14:01 Universal Standard Time, the first military installation ceased to exist. It was the shipyard in orbit around the. One moment it was there, a massive construction platform where the Empire built its largest warships. The next moment there was just an expanding cloud of superheated plasma and debris. No warning. No missile launch detected. No ship in range that could have fired. Just instant, complete destruction. Before they could even process what had happened, 6 more installations vanished. Orbital defense platforms around their 3 primary military worlds simply exploded into fragments. Again, no incoming fire detected. No enemy ships on sensors. The military scrambled to figure out what was happening, but their sensors were designed to detect ships moving slower than light, energy weapons, and plasma torpedoes. They had no way to track something moving at 99.9% of light speed. Admiral watched the tactical display from Earth's command center, buried deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean. Red dots representing military targets were winking out with mechanical precision. Each dot had been carefully selected. Each target had been chosen to eliminate military capability while causing zero civilian casualties. Shipyards, fleet anchorages, weapon platforms, command stations, nothing else. "Time to impact on next salvo," he asked quietly. 4 minutes, his tactical officer replied. "All missiles tracking nominal, no intercepts detected." "They can't intercept," the weapons specialist added. "They don't even know they're being fired on until the warhead hits. By the time they see the impact, the missile has already struck." Nodded. It was elegant in its simplicity, really. Humans had been working on relativistic kinetic weapons for over a century, ever since they realized that accelerating something to near light speed turned any mass into a devastating weapon. The problem had always been that you couldn't use them anywhere near a planet without risking the planet itself. The impact energy was too high, the collateral damage too severe. They were doomsday weapons, designed for a war that could only end in mutual extinction. But against military targets in space, far from civilian populations, they were perfect. A small missile, barely 100 kilograms, accelerated over weeks to 99.9% of light speed. Silent, invisible to conventional sensors, carrying the kinetic energy of a strategic nuclear weapon, and once launched, impossible to stop because the target would never know it was coming until a fraction of a second before impact. "How many do we have left in the inventory?" asked. 17,000 missiles still in flight, sir. Launch capacity for another 20,000 if needed." "It won't be needed," said. He had been a soldier long enough to know when a fight was already over. The just didn't know it yet. In space, panic was setting in. Within the first 10 minutes, 37 military installations had been destroyed. Within 20 minutes, it was 83. Every major shipyard, every fleet anchorage, every military space station was simply vanishing. The fleet tried to disperse, tried to hide behind planets, tried to jump to faster-than-light speeds to escape. It didn't matter. The missiles had been fired weeks ago, already locked onto their targets, already tracking their trajectories with cold mathematical precision. An admiral tried to save his fleet by moving them into orbit around a civilian station, using the population as a human shield. Saw the move on his display and felt a cold anger settle in his chest. He opened a direct channel to the command network, something that shouldn't have been possible but that humanity had quietly prepared as a contingency. "This is Fleet Admiral of Earth. If you do not move your ships away from that civilian station within 30 seconds, we will destroy them anyway and accept the collateral damage. We gave you 72 hours to avoid this. You chose war. Don't make us choose to become monsters. Move your ships, now." The admiral, his mandibles trembling with rage and fear, gave the order. The fleet dispersed. 15 seconds later, 23 warships exploded into plasma. The civilian station remained untouched. The message was clear. Humanity could hit whatever it wanted, whenever it wanted, with absolute precision. Using civilians as shields would only get those civilians killed. The Galactic Council was in emergency session, representatives shouting over each other in panic and confusion. The representative was projecting data on the display, showing the systematic destruction of military power. "This is genocide," someone shouted. "The humans must be stopped." "It's not genocide," the representative said quietly. He had been monitoring the strikes, checking casualty reports. "They're not hitting civilian targets. Every strike is purely military. The precision is terrifying. They know exactly where every soldier is, and they're killing only soldiers." "How is that even possible?" the demanded. "Because they planned for this," the replied. "For 3 years, every human ship, every human station, every human presence in space was gathering data, mapping their military infrastructure, recording fleet movements, building a complete tactical picture. And then when they were attacked, they simply executed the plan." On the display, more red dots vanished. The empire was being surgically dismantled, piece by piece, target by target. "They're not even using their fleet," someone noticed. "Where are the human ships?" "Still in human space," they said. "They don't need ships. They're launching these missiles from beyond sensor range, probably from their own territory. By the time they detect them, they've already hit. It's not a battle, it's an execution." 17 minutes after the first strike, the last military target was eliminated. 17 minutes to destroy 300 worlds worth of military infrastructure. The fleet, pride of an empire that had conquered a dozen species, simply ceased to exist. Thousands of warships, hundreds of stations, all gone, vaporized by weapons they hadn't even known existed until they started dying. The silence that followed was profound. The galaxy had just watched an empire fall in less time than it took to have lunch. Opened another channel, this time broadcasting to every world in space. His face appeared on every display, every communications device. "This is Fleet Admiral James representing the unified Earth government. 72 hours ago, we gave the Empire a simple choice. Surrender the individual responsible for attacking our ambassador or face consequences. You chose to protect him. You chose to mock us. You chose to believe that 3,000 years of history made you invincible. You were wrong. Your military no longer exists. Your fleet is gone. Your weapons platforms are destroyed. Your shipyards are scrap. We did this without killing a single civilian because, unlike you, we understand restraint. We could have destroyed your worlds. We could have killed billions. We didn't. Remember that. Remember that humanity showed mercy when you showed none." He paused, letting the message sink in. Across 300 worlds, billions of beings watched in stunned silence. "OK will be surrendered to human custody within 12 hours for trial. The Empire will pay full reparations. Any refusal will result in Phase 2 of our response, which will be significantly less pleasant. You have seen what we can do to military targets. Pray you never see what we can do when we stop caring about precision. The choice is yours. Choose wisely this time." The transmission ended. In the capital, their High Council met in emergency session. The debate lasted less than 5 minutes. OK was dragged from his quarters by his own soldiers and put on a ship bound for human territory. The formal apology was drafted and transmitted. The reparations were agreed to without haggling. The Empire, undefeated for 3,000 years, surrendered completely in less than an hour. On Earth, received the confirmation and allowed himself a small nod. Around him, his staff stood in silence, processing what they had just done. In 17 minutes, they had changed the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Humanity was no longer the newcomer species that could be pushed around. They were the species that you didn't push, not ever, because they would push back with such overwhelming force that resistance became meaningless. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving messages from the Council. They want to know. They want to understand how we did this. They want technical specifications on the relativistic missiles." Laughed a short bitter sound. "Tell them that information is classified. Tell them that if they want to know what humanity is capable of, they should ask the. I'm sure they'll be happy to explain." "What do we do with OK when he arrives?" "Trial," said simply. "Fair trial according to human law. We charge him with attempted murder, violation of diplomatic immunity, and assault. If convicted, he serves his sentence in a human prison. We show the galaxy that we have laws, that we follow them, that we're not monsters. We're just very, very good at violence when we need to be." Around the galaxy, other species were having similar conversations. In the crystal cities, their leaders calculated the implications of humanity's display of force. In the meditation chambers, telepaths tried to comprehend the cold efficiency of human warfare. In a dozen other civilizations, military strategists tore up their war plans and started over, accounting for an enemy that could destroy them before they even knew they were under attack. The message was spreading, carried on quantum channels and faster-than-light communication networks. Humanity was dangerous, not in the way they were dangerous with big ships and loud weapons. Humanity was dangerous in a quiet, patient way. They studied you. They learned everything about you. They gave you chances to back down. And then, if you didn't take those chances, they ended you with such absolute finality that there was no recovering from it. Some species started discussing treaties with Earth, hopping to lock in peaceful relations before humanity decided they were a threat. Other species retreated into their own territory, wanting nothing to do with these strange primates who could kill with such precision. A few, the very stupid or very proud, started planning how they might defeat humanity if it ever came to war. Those plans always ended the same way, with the strategist staring at the numbers and realizing that you couldn't fight an enemy who could hit you from light years away with weapons you couldn't detect or intercept. The Galactic Council called for humanity to reveal the full extent of their weapons technology. Response was polite but firm. No, you'll know what we want you to know, you'll see what we want you to see, and you'll remember what happened to the when they decided to test us. That should be enough information for anyone who's paying attention. The Council protested, argued, and threatened sanctions. Earth ignored them. What were they going to do, make humanity leave the Council? Humanity had just proven they didn't need the Council's protection. If anything, the Council needed humanity's restraint. Without it, any species that angered Earth might simply wake up one day to find their military gone and their options reduced to surrender or extinction. Ambassador woke up in a medical facility, her face bandaged and her chest wrapped tight. The doctors assured her the damage was being repaired, that in a few weeks she would be as good as new. She asked what had happened after she lost consciousness, and they told her. She lay in her hospital bed, processing the information, trying to understand that the attack on her had triggered a response that changed galactic politics forever. A part of her felt guilty. All those soldiers dead because someone hit her. Another part of her, the part that had seen Okay's smirk as he walked away unpunished, felt satisfied. Not happy, but satisfied. Justice had been done, even if the price was high. Visited her 3 days later, making the trip from Earth personally. He sat beside her bed and studied her face, still healing from the injury. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "For what?" Sarah asked. "For defending me, for showing the galaxy that humans protect their own." "For making you the reason," replied. "You're going to be famous now. The ambassador whose injury started a war. That's a heavy thing to carry." Sarah was quiet for a moment, then shook her head. "It wasn't my injury that started anything. It was their decision to attack me. It was their decision not to surrender, okay? They made every choice that led to this. We just responded." Still said, "I wanted you to know that we didn't do this lightly. Every target was. Every strike was calculated to minimize collateral damage. We didn't want to be monsters." "You weren't monsters," Sarah said. "Monsters kill indiscriminately. You killed precisely. There's a difference." Stood to leave, then paused. "The Council wants you to stay on as ambassador. They think having you return will help normalize relations, show that there are no hard feelings. Are you willing?" Sarah thought about it, imagined walking back into that chamber where she had been attacked, imagined facing the other species who had watched her bleed and done nothing. Then she thought about Okay, on his way to Earth in chains, and the entire military reduced to debris because someone decided to teach her a lesson. "Yes," she said, "I'll go back. Someone needs to remind them what happens when they forget to be civilized." 3 weeks later, Ambassador Sarah walked back into the Galactic Council chamber for the first time since the attack. Her face had healed completely, the medical technology leaving no scars. But something in her eyes had changed. The other representatives saw it immediately. She had been attacked, had nearly died, and had watched her species respond with such overwhelming force that the galaxy's balance of power had shifted in minutes. She was no longer the careful diplomat trying to earn respect. She was the representative of a species that had proven it would burn down empires to protect its own. The representative approached her first, her crystalline body flickering with nervous colors. "Ambassador, we are pleased to see you recovered. I wanted to personally apologize for the Council's failure to protect you during the incident." Sarah looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the fear hiding behind the diplomatic words. They were calculating species, always running the numbers, always looking for the optimal outcome. They had calculated what humanity might do if provoked further, and had decided that friendship was much safer than neutrality. "Thank you," Sarah said simply. "I understand the Council was in a difficult position." "Still," they continued, "we should have acted sooner. We should have demanded immediate consequences. We should have." "You should have done exactly what you did," Sarah interrupted gently. "You let the situation resolve itself. It worked out fine." Fine was an interesting way to describe the complete destruction of the military, but they didn't argue. She chimed softly and returned to her position, clearly relieved that the human wasn't holding grudges. The representative approached next, his third eye focused intently on Sarah. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward his forehead. Sarah knew he was asking permission to read her surface thoughts, something did to better understand emotional states. She had always refused before, valuing her privacy. This time she nodded. "Go ahead." This third eye glowed softly as he made contact with her mind. Sarah felt the gentle touch of his consciousness, probing carefully at her thoughts and feelings. She didn't try to hide anything. She let him see the fear she had felt when OK struck her, the pain, the anger. She also let him see her satisfaction at Earth's response, her understanding that sometimes violence was the only language that bullies understood. His third eye closing slowly. "You have changed," he said quietly. "Before you sought peace, now you seek balance." "I always sought balance," Sarah replied. "I just understand better now what balance actually means. Peace isn't the absence of violence. It's the knowledge that violence has consequences too severe to risk." They nodded slowly. "This is a very old way of thinking. Most species move past it as they mature." "Maybe," Sarah said. "Or maybe most species forget it and have to relearn it the hard way. We've learned it recently. The lesson stuck." The session was about to begin when the new representative arrived. The old ambassador had been recalled, probably in disgrace. The new one was smaller than most, his armor plates less decorated, his manner nervous. He approached Sarah's podium carefully, like someone walking through a minefield. "Ambassador," he said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into hesitant words. "I am Ambassador Has. I have been sent to express the Empire's deepest regrets for the incident. OK has been convicted by your courts and is serving his sentence. Reparations have been paid. We hope that humanity can accept our apology and that relations between our species can be cordial." Sarah studied him. He was terrified. His species had gone from galactic superpower to cautious supplicant in less than a month. Part of her felt pity. Part of her remembered lying on the floor, drowning in her own blood while his predecessor laughed. "Ambassador Has," she said formally. "Earth accepts the Empire's apology. We hope that this incident will serve as a lesson to both our species. You learned that attacking humans has consequences. We learned that the galaxy is full of species who will test boundaries. As long as those boundaries are respected going forward, I see no reason why our peoples cannot work together productively." The relief in Haz's body language was obvious. His mandibles relaxed, his posture shifted from rigid to merely formal. "Thank you, Ambassador. The Empire is grateful for humanity's mercy." Mercy? The word hung in the air. 17 minutes of orbital bombardment, thousands of military personnel dead, an entire empire's fleet reduced to scrap. And they called it mercy because humanity could have done so much worse. Maybe they were right. Maybe that was mercy. The session began, and Sarah took her seat at the human podium. Today's agenda was about trade routes through the Terran expanse, the same issue that had sparked the confrontation 3 weeks ago. They had withdrawn their claim completely. So had 2 other species that had been pushing for access. Suddenly, Everyone agreed that human territory was exactly as the treaties defined it, and nobody needed to argue about it. The session proceeded smoothly, almost boringly. Proposals were made, votes were taken, compromises were reached. It was all very civilized. Sarah found herself occasionally glancing at the spot where she had fallen, where her blood had stained the floor before the cleaning systems removed it. The stain was gone, but the memory remained. She suspected it remained for everyone in the chamber. After the session ended, Sarah returned to her quarters on the council station. They were comfortable rooms, well appointed, with a view of the stars. She stood at the window for a long time, looking out at the galaxy. Somewhere out there, the Empire was rebuilding, their military structure being reformed under humanity's watchful oversight. Earth had offered to help to share some technology to ensure they could defend themselves against external threats. But the weapons would be limited, the fleet smaller, and the oversight would continue for decades. It was occupation without calling it occupation, conquest without armies. They were technically independent, but everyone knew the truth. Earth could destroy them again any time they chose. That knowledge changed everything. Sarah's personal communicator chimed. It was a message from Admiral. She opened it and read quickly. Ambassador, wanted to update you on the trial. OK has been sentenced to 30 years in prison for attempted murder, assault, and violation of diplomatic immunity. He will serve his full sentence with no possibility of parole. The government has accepted the sentence as just. Thought you'd want to know. Also, the president wanted me to tell you that she's proud of the work you're doing. So am I. Stay safe out there. 30 years. It seemed like a long time, but it also seemed too short for nearly killing someone. Still, it was more justice than most ambassadors got when they were attacked. Usually, diplomatic incidents just got swept under the rug in the name of maintaining peace. Earth had decided that maintaining peace meant making sure everyone knew that attacking humans was a very, very bad idea. Sarah sent a brief reply thanking for the update, then sat down to write her report on the day's session. It was strange how quickly things had returned to normal. The Galactic Council continued its business, species continued their negotiations, and the galaxy kept turning. But underneath the normalcy, something fundamental had changed. Every species in the Council now knew that humanity was not to be trifled with. They knew that humans kept detailed records of everyone around them. They knew that humans had weapons that could reach across the stars and strike with devastating precision. Most importantly, they knew that humans would actually use those weapons if pushed. Fear was a powerful diplomatic tool. Sarah had never wanted to be feared, had always preferred to be respected or even liked. But watching how smoothly today's session had gone, how reasonable everyone had been, she had to admit that fear had its uses. Nobody wanted to test humanity's patience. Nobody wanted to find out if there were worse weapons waiting in Earth's arsenal. The relativistic missiles had been terrifying enough. What else might humans have prepared? Truth was that humanity didn't have much else. The relativistic missiles were it, the big weapon that had been prepared over decades just in case it was needed. There were other weapons, of course, conventional military hardware and defensive systems, but nothing as devastating as the missiles that had ended the fleet. Had told her that in confidence, had explained that humanity's strategy going forward was to never let anyone know the full extent of their capabilities. Let other species wonder. Let them imagine weapons even more terrible than the ones they had seen. The uncertainty would do more to maintain peace than any demonstration of force. Sarah finished her report and sent it back to Earth. Then she changed into comfortable clothes and tried to relax. Tomorrow there would be more negotiations, more careful diplomatic dance, more balancing act between showing strength and not appearing aggressive. It was exhausting, but it was also important. Humanity needed representatives who understood both the power they wielded and the responsibility that came with it. A soft chime at her door interrupted her thoughts. She checked the security monitor and saw the representative standing outside. Unusual. Species rarely visited each other's quarters outside of formal meetings. She opened the door. "Ambassador," the said, bowing slightly, "I apologize for the intrusion. I wanted to speak with you privately if you—"